I think we'll make a start now. So this session is on well-being, which of course is a key issue in education as well as online education now, but probably very particularly in online education. And that has, of course, been brought home to us quite significantly over the COVID years, when students not only had the pressure of working from home, but they also had all those issues of isolation and student well-being, which were literally being kind of forced upon them at that point. So I think it's very pertinent, I think, to have these three papers today dealing with well-being issues. And I think we could start off with our first paper, which is from Pey Ning from Malaysia. And Pey, I'm sure that the facilitator will arrange that you'll be up on the screen for us here. But Pey is going to talk to us about the psychological impact of online learning and teaching among the university community of a Malaysian education institution. And I think you're going to kind of analyse that psychological input there, impact there for us, and we look forward to hearing from you, Pey. So just start when you're ready. You've got 20 minutes, Pey, and I'll give you a probably a 5-minute warning at the end, and I'll just say quickly 5 minutes. I'll just say it quickly. I'll come in and come out, and then at 20 minutes I'll mention that too. Okay, thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you. Very good morning. Good day, because we are in the evening now at our in Malaysia. Thank you for the opportunity given to us to present to you our study on psychological impact of online learning and teaching among the university community of Malaysian education institution. We are from two private institutions in Malaysia, and we would like to present to you our finding, which, apology, we are still working on it. And but we would like to present to you our findings, and we would like to get some feedbacks and some ideas on the study, on our study. Please allow me to introduce a bit on our background before I proceed to our the reason why we conduct this study. So we know that COVID-19 has brought significant emotional impact to the public, and then we do observe increased level of the psychological impact in terms of depression, anxiety, and also stress level. So due to the preventive measure, and then we had closure of the education institution, the university, so we have to shift our mode of teaching and learning from the mode of conventional to the online learning mode. So we do have gaps in terms of technology, our method of teaching and learning, but we would like to observe, especially in terms of the people, because the overall impact on education and also on the mental health in terms of the university community is expected to be very significant. So why we selected education sector? Because we observe reports of increased level of the depression, anxiety, and also stress in the students, in university students, especially in Malaysia. And then we like to observe their mental health status and their psychological impact, because we know that education sector, it was one of the sectors which experienced a longer period of closure, and of course the earliest, right? So that's the reason why we actually selected education sector. And then we know that it contributes, actually e-learning and teaching contributes to the psychological distress among the university students. However, we actually have limited study in Malaysia on the impact of implementation of e-learning on the psychological and also mental health of our university students, and especially in terms of the university community, which also includes our staff. So our study actually helps to validate the needs to develop measure to lessen the impact, or at least in terms of the to validate the needs of suggest for any measures. It might be in terms of the nature of the job or the education sector, or in terms of e-learning and teaching methods and tools. But we are validating the needs, but we will be working on the suggestion in the future, in our future work and in the future conference. So our study aims to analyze the psychological impact of learning, online learning teaching among the university community of the Malaysian education institution during the era of COVID-19. And then we'll be using the DAS21 to assess the mental health status of the selected university community. So we selected one university for our data collection. We had 200 members of a private institution in Malaysia who participated in our survey. And then we conducted cross-sectional survey, distributed the Google Forms from 1st to 31st of March 2022. We actually picked this period of time because this was the time when we recorded the highest numbers of confirmed cases of COVID in Malaysia throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. And then our questionnaire actually included the demographic characteristic and also DAS21 to assess depression, anxiety, and stress. We conducted the analysis using descriptive and linear regression to observe the relationship. So the reason we picked the data collection period because it was during the around March, we had a peak recorded in terms of our COVID-19 cases as compared to the other duration, other period of time throughout the pandemic. So which we had actually more than 30,000, near to 35,000 of confirmed cases per day out of population is considered a very high number. So during that time, we actually had to swap ourselves to actually full online mode of teaching and learning, which a lot of our students they experience quite numbers of our students experience increased level in terms of depression or anxiety and stress. We carry out our analysis. We check reliability with our Cronbach alpha statistic, and later on exploratory vector analysis on our DAS21 items, and then our chi-square fit for the model, and lastly with our linear regression analysis to check the association between our variables and also on the DAS subscale, which is depression, anxiety, and also stress. From our survey, we found that during the period of time during our survey for the past 2 weeks, which is our questionnaire asked the students on their level of depression, anxiety, and stress for the past 2 weeks, which is around February to March, on their depression level, anxiety, stress level of different subscale. So we observed actually more than half of the participants experience the mild level to severe level of depression and anxiety. But for stress we have less than half. We have less than half, but it is still we still have 22% of those with mild level of stress. And then in terms of if we actually compare stress, depression, and anxiety, stress is slightly better than depression and anxiety. We further check on the association, and then we found that all our variables are highly significant, significance with our DAS scale, subscale of depression, anxiety, and also stress. And also we had our own questionnaire in terms of the impact of the subscale of depression, anxiety, and stress. And then we found that the impact are also significant in terms of their association with the DAS scale. But we would actually like to further add on the variables in our future study, which we are currently still working on it. So our finding shows that we have more than half of the participants experiencing mild to even severe level of depression, anxiety, which is more than half of 52 and 56%. But there is still 36%, which is near to 40% of them experiencing mild to severe level of stress. Whereas for those who falls under moderate to severe, which is higher than the level of mild, we have near to a quarter, which consists of 22% and 20% of the participants experiencing moderate to severe level of depression and anxiety. Stress level is slightly lower, but it's still near to 15% of our total participants experiencing the moderate to severe level of stress. And in terms of our association, we found that all the variables, they are significant, even though we only have demographic variables at the moment to check on the significant association. But we will add more in the future for our study. So our study add to the literature, especially in terms of Malaysia setting on teaching, learning literature to extend our understanding on this area, especially during the period of March 2022 as compared to other duration, which we had the peak of confirmed cases of COVID-19. And then we also document this finding to assess in terms of the symptoms of depression, anxiety and stress of the university community. So we are not just focusing on students group, but also the community, which includes staff and from different departments from the selected education institution. And also we observe the impact, which we relate the impact to the DAS 21 subscales for the assessment. Okay, so that's all for my presentation, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Simpy. That was very, very interesting indeed. Thank you. Now I'm going to hand over to the group now for any questions, and I'm not sure, Matt, whether we can take questions orally or whether these can be put into the chat. Yeah, I was going to just say that if you could raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question, that would be really helpful. And or alternatively, if you want to just drop something in the chat, I'm just going to check the chat now to see if there's anything there at the moment. If anyone's put anything in the chat, then feel free. But if anyone would like to ask a question, please raise your hand. That'd be really good. Maybe I could start it off then, because Simpy, I was wondering, you just mentioned at the end there about faculty, and in fact you've done study with faculty and with students, and I wondered if you found a difference in the stress levels with faculty and students, whether your data identified that.
Actually, we do have questionnaire. We do divide them into different sectors, which group from the academic department, which group from the admin, or which group from the students. But apology, because we have not carried out the included it into our presentation to be more specific. Actually, this is our limitation, because we did not actually divide specifically which group, which departments, or is it from which department or students which might have higher or different level of the depression or anxiety and stress. But we are working on it, and then we will divide into different sections to have a more detailed findings on this study.
That's useful. Thank you.
Thank you.
I I did see a hand fleetingly go up there when I was, and VJ, you'd like to ask a question, right? Okay. Now, Anita, I think you also came on there, so we'll have you next, Anita, if that's all right.
No,
VJ,
it's okay. You asked the question I wanted to ask.
Oh, did I? Right, sorry. VJ, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Sim, for the nice presentation and with your nice analysis and all. So I just wonder, do you have any idea that because of the COVID, is that, do you think that, or do you have further study on that because of the COVID, that they have these kind of anxiety and all these levels, or there may be any other reasons behind that? Like, maybe you have not studied, but in your idea, what may be the reason? Like, is that like continuous procedure of having that anxiety levels among university students, or do you think that because of the pandemic they have increased significantly? Like,
thank you for the question. I think, in my opinion, but actually we have not worked on this solution and suggestion or reason in detail, but we would like to work on this reason, to work on the reason why. Maybe we can observe the reason why we see increase in their depression or anxiety or stress level. And thank you very much for the idea. I will take down the idea to work for our further studies in the future. So in my opinion, I think that it must be during especially March. I can say that from my experience, as compared to other duration of the pandemic, actually, we do have students performing, I think, if we actually compare their performance, actually the 22nd March, their performance were, we actually observe a drop in terms of their performance as compared to previous year, different semester for the past semester, which is still during the pandemic, but because that was the time which we had really a peak records of the peaks of the confirmed cases, which we even have a lot of our students were positive. So they were not actually, their progress were affected as well in terms of taking the assessment or even the final examination. So that would be the reason. But now we are actually recovering. I mean, in terms of, because we are back to physical classes since we had drops in the cases. So I would think that actually the increase in the cases, it relates to the reason why they have an increase in their depression, anxiety, and stress level.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vijay, and thank you, Simbe, for that answer. Because I think it's quite a good point, that, Vijay, because presumably some of these students will have been preparing for exams and could be stressed in other ways, as well as COVID at that moment. So there could be varying factors that come in there. Hugh, I see you've got a question there, Hugh. Would you like to speak and give your question?
Yeah, thank you very much, Patricia, and thank you, Simpe, for your presentation. I was interested to ask you about the kind of question of whether you feel mental health is seen as a taboo in Malaysia. And I mean, I think from a Western perspective, we sometimes have the impression that perhaps for students in Southeast Asia in particular, that there's a reluctance for among students to sort of admit that they are suffering from this type of these types of conditions. So I was just wondering if you had any sort of general observations about how easy it was for you to get students to sort of to tell you about this, given those issues of taboo.
Okay, thank you for the question. I would say that actually our students, they don't actually realize they have these symptoms only until when they actually fill out the survey. because they were not aware, they are not aware that they're actually in this situation, whether depression, anxiety, or whether they are having stress, only until when we actually distributed the questionnaire, because I do get some feedback from the students that when we actually ask them in detail on the question, some of the question, like for example, sometimes they might feel their hands trembling without reason, or maybe increase of heart rate. So actually all this indicates that some of the students, they might have, they might show symptoms of the depression or even anxiety or either stress, but without them themselves realize that they actually have these symptoms. So we do have, counselings for most of the education institution in Malaysia, but maybe the student themselves, sometimes they might not realize they are actually having these symptoms, and then those symptoms actually affect their performance in terms of academic or maybe in their daily lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Simpei. I think Hugh's nodding. I think that's satisfied us. Yeah, thank you. Now, are there any other questions? Because if there aren't, I think we're ready to move on. But just a couple of seconds. But I think there's no hands going up, no questions coming there. So I'm going to move on to our next speaker, and that's Usman Labaran, and I see you there. Usman, welcome to this session from Baze University in Nigeria, and Usman's going to be talking to us about the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the academic performance and mental health of students at his university. So it'd be interesting to see how this compares with what we've heard earlier in that study. So Usman, if you'd like to go ahead. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Usman Labaran Yunusa from Baze University. And I have a presentation, a few slides that I just prepared so that the details will be much clearer. Let me see if I can put it up. So as I mentioned earlier, my name is Labaran Usman Yunusa. I'm a senior business intelligence and learning analyst at Baze University. And I'm here to talk to you guys about the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the academic performance and mental health of our students here at Baze University. So first of all, there's this line that my mentor always says: information is the oil of the 21st century and analytics is the combustion engine. So this prompted me to carry out this study during my master's thesis, which coincidentally, it fell during the COVID-19 pandemic. So when we were hit hard with the COVID-19 pandemic, I was doing my master's thesis then. So I carried out this research during that period. So data in higher education institutions, especially in Nigeria and in Baze University. So what we do have is, at Baze University, we collect large amounts of data because everything we do here is digital. You rarely see papers flying around like the conventional universities that we have in Nigeria. And this prompted us to say, what do we need to do with this data? And my mentor, fortunately, he's the director of IT in Baze University, so he has access to this data. So he suggested that I look into how I can utilize this data to help the students and to also improve on the methods that we already have. So moving forward, this is just a sample graphic of the data that we collect and just an estimation of what we collect. So this particular one, where we see 200,000 assessment and module evaluation. So at the end of each and every semester, the students are supposed to assess their lecturer. They're supposed to assess the teaching method, be it virtual, be it physical. So this data was very crucial in carrying out this research because we were able to determine that before COVID and after COVID, was employed, because I'm already a member of Baze University. I was a student then, and I was also an intern because I was working under the director of IT here. So I employed convenience sampling because this data is within my reach. It is within my own convenience. And then secondary internal data from Baze University was also utilized. So that was the about 200,000 assessment and module evaluation data that they collect at the end of each and every semester. And also a questionnaire was sent out to the students. to understand their psychosomatic health, especially how they're coping with the societal norms, the disruption to the societal norm that we've had, how they're coping with e-learning tools, how they're coping with the new method, how they're coping mentally also. So this questionnaire had some questions where we asked the students, do they feel social anxiety when they're told to put their camera on by the lecturer? Because this is one of the things that we noticed. A lot of people refused to put their camera on because they had social anxiety. And the thing is, in class, these are people that are very outspoken. But then when it comes to digital, they were falling behind because of this. So anecdotes and discussions were also employed. So we talked to some of the key management staff, some of the students, and also me particularly then as a master's student, I talked to some of my colleagues because we did some online classes. In fact, what prompted me to check the psychosomatic health was I met a friend, a very amazing friend during COVID. She studies in the University of Plymouth in the UK. So, and she suffers with depression and social anxiety. And fortunately, we got to talking, you know, during COVID, you had nothing to do and we're talking online mostly. And she told me that, yes, she was suffering from depression and social anxiety, but now she has more attacks. She has more panic attacks due to COVID, because before in class, she would just go and sit behind. But now that they're doing online classes, the lecturer will always intimate the students to put their camera on, to talk, to participate, so that he will know you just haven't left your computer on and you just maybe entered the class and left your computer so that you can get that attendance. So she became more prone to attacks because of this. So this is what prompted me to say, why don't I check the psychosomatic health of Baze University students? Because initially it was even an oversight in the research. And then another thing is the data analysis. So some descriptive data analysis to check gender, socioeconomic class, age, and so on was done, and some statistical analysis. So here peer t-test sampling was carried out, the Cronbach alpha reliability test was carried out. And then we also did some visual analysis where we used Tableau to present this data. Because, you know, when you're dealing with management or high-level staff, they don't really do well with numbers, but pictorially, if you show them a graph, a line graph that says, this is the performance of the students, this is where they're plummeting in terms of their mental health, you'll be able to assimilate that graph and they'll be able to make key management decisions. So regression analysis was also employed to find out what really was the difference in performance. And to let you know, the students actually performed better during COVID because there were several reasons. So in the questionnaire, most of them mentioned that assignments were easier to do, e-learning platforms were easier to use. They always had materials to go back to and read. There were recordings, just like we're recording here. So there were recordings of the class that they would always fall back to and go and watch again so that they could learn. And the method of assessment changed online. It was no more on-the-spot quizzes. It was now more of case studies where you have to go and do proper research, you talk to people, then you submit. So the research design employed was a mixed method causal comparative. So you causally compared the performance before COVID and after COVID, the level of anxiety and mental health before COVID and after COVID. So we're comparing these two distinct periods. And also action research was employed because action research is when an individual is within his environment. So as I'm within Baze University, as an intern then, and as a master's student, so I was able to employ this action research so that I can make change within my immediate community. So the results and findings, as I mentioned earlier, the students actually performed better during COVID. And also we noticed that there was a gender divide. The females, they performed better than the other gender because they performed actually 14% better. So this prompted us to ask the question, is it that there's a divide somewhere, or there's a lack of understanding, or there's some sort of teaching methodology gap there? And we're able to come up with some solutions to that. And also the teaching methods employed, so the physical, the online, and the hybrid. So currently, after COVID now, our university is still running the hybrid methodology where you do some classes online and you do some physical. So due to this research, we're able to cling to this hybrid method because it really showed us that students are performing better online. So why don't we split the classes into some online, some physical? And then another thing is, as I mentioned earlier, the students mentioned that e-learning made their assessments easier because now they had case studies, not on the spot quiz. So, and another thing is when we're looking at mental and psychosomatic health, we saw that there was a negative effect during the COVID-19 pandemic. The students experienced depression, social anxiety, and fear to perform. For example, there's a class presentation. People that are experiencing social anxiety, they are automatically going to fail that presentation because they will be stuttering as they talk. They wouldn't be able to present their work. So issues like this compounded. And the good thing was we were able to provide solution to the management. And currently, one of the results of this study is that we have a guidance and counseling unit in the university where you can go and talk to professionals about how you're doing mentally. And this is just a simple graph of how the performance was. So before COVID, there was a little bit dip in performance, if you can see. And during COVID, there was a 14% increase in student performance. So this study was carried out across 2 years. So we run a trimester system in the university. So we have 3 trimesters in a year. So this is from 2019, that's before COVID, 2019 semester 1, semester 2, semester 3, and then 2020 during COVID. So that's semester 1, 2, and 3, then 21. So we had, as of that time, we're only in the 2nd semester when this research was carried out. And in the end, COVID-19 came, it happened, we can't move away from it. We had to adapt to different teaching methodologies. And especially in Nigeria, mental health is something that we're just moving into. And as someone mentioned earlier, in Southeast Asia, it feels like a taboo. It's the same thing in Nigeria. You can't go up to your parents and say you're suffering from depression or anxiety. They wouldn't listen. They wouldn't necessarily listen to you because they believe that you're supposed to be mentally tough. You're supposed to be strong. You shouldn't be experiencing issues like this. But then unfortunately, many people are falling through the gaps. And then to some extent, you go through extreme measures. Some people even go as far as failing academically. Some people go as far as taking their life. And this is something that we're currently experiencing in Nigeria, and we're planning to see how we can put in initiatives in place to move forward so that we can make people much more aware of what is going on in the mental health space. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Labaran. That was very interesting. Now, I wonder if we have any questions that anyone would like to ask. I'm just checking to see that I can see everybody now, and if anyone would like to put a question in the chat, or if you would like to raise your hand, anyone. Just so there's just a short period of questions for this time, because it's I think this is what they call a lightning presentation. But if anyone has any questions there, then it'd be really interesting to hear from you. Oh, Anita, would you like to give your question? Thank you.
Yes, hi. Thank you. That was really, really interesting. I was just interested, you mentioned that the assessments had changed during COVID, and I was interested if you thought that the assessments were, yes, students were able to achieve better on them, but do you think that they were more authentic assessments or better for what they were being assessed to do eventually?
So one thing that the university did, especially to tackle this, is we employed certain methodologies. For example, there was a committee that used to check the assessments that were being passed to the students. And also they have to go through the Turnitin plagiarism software, where even if you decide to go an extra mile to plagiarize somebody's intellectual property, this software is there to tell the university that, okay, this person did this, and we'll be able to assess. And that committee was very crucial, because for each and every faculty, there was a committee set up made up of the dean and some members of the faculty to ensure that these assessments are up to standard. And also the university was able to employ some external parties to be able to validate these assessments, especially the regulatory body for education here in Nigeria, the National University Commission. They were able to help in these aspects. I don't know if that answers your question.
In a way, you mentioned things like case studies and individual research wasn't included in the assessments during COVID. Do you think that was it may have allowed certain people to do better, but did it allow certain other students to do less well? I know people are learn differently and show their promise and what they've achieved in different ways. Your thoughts on that?
Yes. So one of the key questions in our questionnaire was, how do you learn? Because we've understood that many people are audio learners, visual learners, and so on. So one thing is, from that, we're able to understand that a lot of people had a slight difference in learning. Case studies are where they perform best. Some people perform best in quizzes. For example, for me, I perform best in on-the-spot quizzes, because even though I might perform very well in the case study, I'm very reluctant to do it because I will procrastinate it till the end period before I prepare what I need to do. And usually that leads to some sort of gap. But if you give an on-the-spot quiz, I'm right there, I have to do it. I don't have a choice, right? So we actually understood that, yes, there's an issue somewhere. So we're able to personalize learning for some of them. So what we did was, sometimes the lecturers will give a myriad of assessments. Some are case studies, some are quizzes by the virtue of Google Forms, where also in Google Forms, the university was able to purchase a particular add-on called QLogo, where if you decide to leave the tab, it will report to the instructee that you left the tab. If you copy anything and paste, it will also do that. It will also capture screenshots of what you're doing. Maybe someone is standing beside you. So we virtually employed a lot of methods, especially for the assessment, as you mentioned. So quizzes were also given, and case studies were given, individual research were given. And then in the end, the lecturer has the ability or virtue to choose which ones you performed best and record them for you, so as to bridge that gap.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anita. Thank you, Labaran, and thank you for that presentation. Now we're now going to move on to our last presentation. VJ, after a false start before, VJ, we're going to come back to you. VJ, you're going to be talking on, as I say, compassionate communications for motivating students to switch their cameras on during online group meetings. Now, I'm just going to let you get started because we've got 20 minutes for this talk and we're running through our time at the moment. So just please start with you ready, and I'll give you a 5-minute warning.
I'm going to talk about compassionate communications for motivating students to switch their cameras on during online group meetings. So let's see first, what does it mean by compassion? As to the Compassionate Mind Foundation, which is what we are getting the definition from them, noticing, not normalizing distress or disadvantaging of yourself or others, and taking wise action to reduce or prevent it. So there we have two actions actually: noticing or the disadvantages of yourself and others, and then taking wise decision. So since this is not actually face-to-face learning, so it is not possible having eye contact. So here we use screen gaze because identifying who is making eye contact with whom is not possible in online. So as to Vertigal et al. 2002 and 2003, we use the term screen gaze for here in this study. So actually what's happening in online group work, as in the previous study also, you were mentioning that they were not switching on their cameras. This is one of my screenshot before undergoing that training. No one is switching on the cameras. So there were research recently on claiming that students are not switching on their camera, especially in online group work or in online HE group meetings. So as to the Brea et al., it tells that disconnection, because students are not switching on their cameras, the disconnection amongst and between students has been entrenched. And as to the research by Ullman and Sommer and Capito, Halki, and all of them are mentioning that increasing feelings of social isolation, loneliness of students affect negative psychological consequences such as poorer overall cognitive performance and reduction of quality of life. So there are more. So further, educational experience is being reduced because they are not switching on the cameras, and there are reasons behind that too. Students are concerned about their background and where they are actually and the appearance of them. These are some matters to consider. So here, my research question was, can students be motivated to switch their cameras on during their online group meetings by learning about the cognitive skills of compassionate communication? So this is actually the sample collected from 5 universities of UK as the pilot study. So 2 discussion groups, each comprised 4 international Sri Lankan STEM students, mixed Tamil, Sinhalese and Muslim. So they were not known to each other previously. Here is the methodology. So it's actually having 3 main steps. First step was the pre-intervention, where each student, each group of the students conducted a video recorded research-based presentation and then joined into the follow-up discussion. So that is the first step. Data were collected from video recorded student group presentations, discussions, and then the focus group, as well as ethnographic field notes. After that, I conducted the intervention session where each group had a 90-minute training session in cognitive skills of compassionate communication. This is actually, they were introduced the psychobiological model of compassion and how our brain works, introduction to that, and then they were given a training on how they can use compassionate communication to help each other, especially in the group meetings. So here the trainer is the researcher, that is me. I got the training from the expert in that field who was using this compassionate focused pedagogy for classroom. That means face-to-face classrooms, not for the online. So I adapted it for online. So the trainer was the same for each group. And after that, the third step was post-intervention, where the same procedure as the first step was conducted. Each group conducted a video recorded research-based presentation by each student and then joined into the discussion. But this time they used separate research article, like it is from peer-reviewed journal article by each student. In the first pre-intervention, there were separate articles, and the same articles were not taken in the post-intervention. They have taken separate articles for the post-intervention group meeting. So the same data collection methods like group meetings, video recorded, and then they were transcribed. And then focus group were conducted with each group after the pre-intervention and after the post-intervention. And ethnographic field notes were taken during the discussion, as well as concerning the video, the recorded videos. And data were analyzed. This is mixed method study. So I used Wilcoxon and sign rank test in R, programming language. and Jupyter in Python to analyze these data quantitatively. And then for the qualitative aspect, template analysis was used for group meetings and focus groups, and ethnographic field notes were analyzed using microethnography. So let me move to the result. So in the quantitative aspect, here each group members screen gaze before and after the training for every presentation and every follow-up discussion, and each group presenter and listener and the discussant, while they are playing these roles during their presentations and the discussion, was noted in playback second to second throughout the presentation or the group meeting. And there were two hypotheses. And you can see the result of the Wilcoxon and Sign Rank test, where when students are working as presenters, that means they were presenting the research article or the journal article, and while they are listening, if someone is presenting while they are listening, and as well as during their discussion. So all these three roles, appeared that p-value is less than 0.001. So that means this indicates statistically significant increase of their screen gaze after the training. That means post-intervention discussion. So it can be visually presented through Jupyter and Python analysis. You can see this graph here. The blue line shows whole groups average screen gaze during pre-intervention discussion. Whole groups average screen gaze. You can see it's in this x-axis, student screen gaze, how the sustained screen gaze was indicated there. 0 means no one having the screen gaze. 0.25 means only one member is sustaining screen gaze. And 0.5, that is the straight line you can see, that means only 2 group members sustain screen gaze. And 0.75 means only 3 members, and 1 indicates all 4 members sustain their screen gaze during the discussion. So here you can see this blue line indicates less than 2 members are having the screen gaze during pre-intervention. But in contrast, during the post-intervention, after the training, like almost all 4 students are sustaining their screen gaze. So this is another analysis done with R plots. This is average screen gaze per member individually, how they sustain their screen gaze before and after the training. You can see these orange bars indicates how they sustain their screen gaze before the training, and these turquoise bars indicates how they sustain their screen gaze after the training. So you can see quite a significant level of increase after the training on their sustaining screen gaze. So here you can see this blue box indicates ethnographic field notes, how they behave, their body language, and how they behave during that. You can see, I'm sorry for maybe it's very small letters, but I will just give you few lines like this screen gaze connection to others in the presenter is S4. So his screen gaze was infrequent and fleeting. And here S2 and S1 is continuously having some external communications, not focusing on the group. They have some external communications with someone in their rooms. So when it comes to the post-intervention, which is shown in the pink box, so in contrast to the pre-intervention, almost all students had increased sustained screen gaze during the post-intervention, according to this ethnographic field notes. So yes, it tells that increased screen gaze after the intervention. So what does it mean? Let me again go through our definition for compassion. Noticing, not normalizing the distress or disadvantage of yourself and others, and taking wise action to reduce or prevent it. So I was going deeper to understand what does it mean to students, why they have increased their screen gaze. So here you can see the focus group findings. So S4 is, this is extract from the focus group transcription. So when I listened to S1, actually he was not smiling always. So I don't know whether the topic is boring to him. So I was asking questions to make it more attractive. And the other people also got interacted with them and him as well to express what he wanted to say. I did that on purpose, actually. So you can see why they have been more sustaining their screen gaze. Here, this is regarding presentation. S8, while he was presenting, when I was presenting, all you guys are nodding heads. So it gives me more confidence, like you guys actually paying attention. So you can see how they on their words, how they change maybe their attitudes. This was found through their focus group transcriptions. So here you can see some other quotations from transcriptions. So I will just go for with S6 and the final one. I would also say about having the webcam turned on. The other day, I didn't want to. Actually, she was a female student. She did not want to switch on her webcam in the pre-intervention. So, but then I think by having it turned on, like we can see each other and it makes us more friendly. This is after the training. So it made us think about new avenues that can be explored through the online learning and teaching. Here, this 4 phases to read online simultaneously on a single screen instead of one at a time around the workplace or classroom table is a change of spatial dimension for reading phases. That is not possible during the face-to-face group meeting. So normally in the face-to-face, we just focus on the speaker, but here we have new opportunity to observe every phase. That means all 4 phases at once in this occasion. So here you can see how they build up confidence to present and to interact with others during their pre-intervention group meeting. So these are some other extractions from the transcription. We come to the conclusion. So a comparison of pre and post cognitive skills of compassionate communication training and this analysis of data through mixed method using quantitative and qualitative. These results indicated first, the post-intervention, a significant increase in students' sustained screen gaze to each other. And those are alternative strategies to motivate students to switch on their cameras in online group work. This is especially, they are not thinking about themselves, but for others. This was found through their own expressions or the statements during the post-intervention. So they understood that it is not only for themselves, they can help others. If someone is stuck in the middle of the presentation, or if someone is not having the proper understanding, they can observe that only if they are switched on their cameras. And they can provide that help to others only if everyone switch on their cameras. So this is what they were motivated to switch on the cameras during their online group meetings. And then further, this study indicated positive outcomes from training students on this compassionate communication for enhancing the social experience as well as learning experience in their group meetings. This is further enlighten the aspect of ongoing development of HE's authentic assessment of group work. So it gives an opportunity for students to focus on how they can work in the workplace, and we can give that in as a training or as a group work during their university career. So in this way, to inform group work practice for students and teachers, it is not only for students, the staff also can have this training. So syllabus designers to look at the syllabus on how we can incorporate this compassionate communication, and future researchers to pursue this line of the research, as Dewey 2016 investigated on the best performed team in Google. So that's what I wanted to tell. So thank you very much for listening. Here are the references. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, VJ. I'm sure we're all very interested in what you've been doing there. Has anyone got any questions at this point? Any questions? I know we're getting to the end here. Christine's asking if you could share your slides, which would be, I'm sure you will. I'm sure we'll have the slides available. And yeah. I think Anita has a question. Anita.
Hi, that's really interesting. All sorts of things that are whizzing around my head about my student as well now. I was just wondering, you kind of hinted that there was an increase in better sort of group working. Did you have any kind of readout that actually they did perform better once they were properly listening to each other? And I mean, were they properly listening to each other? Or they're obviously giving each other better social cues, but did they actually perform better as well?
Yes, of course. Thank you for the question. Yes, this is actually because I was taking their ethnographic field notes. How do they behave? That is one aspect. Actually, just it indicated that they have better social interactions with each other. But on the other hand, I was just focusing on how they were using their learning side. Pre-intervention, how were they raising questions, how did they respond to each other, and how much criticality was there, whether they were critically talking about the things that when others are presenting that. So there, what I found was, yes, of course, there was the critical thinking ability was increased even, because after the training, they were more like having higher order thinking and criticality aspects. They were using their critical thinking while forming questions and answering questions, and they were taking some practical knowledge and what they have experienced previously to what they were talking in the discussion. So this was really observed and reported during the post-intervention. Yes, they had learning experience increased through.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's really good. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I think Hannah, you have a question. Would like to ask it.
Well, thank you very much. And I recognise the irony that I'd had my camera off during the talk. But I was really interested in whether you had a sense that part of the improvement is almost, was there any expectation, I think, that the students felt that they should be having their cameras on, knowing that they're part of a study, knowing that they've had the training? Is there any element that they've changed their behaviour almost partly due to the training, but partly because they know they're being watched again and there's an expectation that they improve their sort of behaviours, as it were?
I was questioning in in the focus group. I was asking them whether there is any other reasons that they impacted on switching on the cameras or interacting in this way, like, because this is second time they were meeting. So that maybe I was having that idea. Sometimes it may be a cause for them to switch on cameras or having these interactions. But what I got was most of the students were mentioning that they were meeting in their university group works, like now it is like more than hundreds times or maybe 1,000 times during their university group work, but they did not experience this kind of a bond and relationship and the confidence to talk to each other in their university group works, even knowing each other. Those students are second year students, so they have already passed 1 year. So that's what I got from them. So then I came to the idea that it is actually not because they are meeting for the second time, all these things happen, but maybe for some students, it may be they are meeting or they need, I think I need to go for further study on actually finding 100% of this, or what is the percentage like. So for switching on the camera because of the training or any other reason, but here from their answers, what I got was because of the training, they motivated to switch on the cameras. Because they were meetings and even their lecturers were asking them to switch on the cameras during their group work in the university, but they are not. Most of them were not switching on their cameras during their university group meetings.
Yes,
Thank you. Thank you, VJ. Interesting points made there, and I think we've had 3 very, very interesting presentations. And I think we're all very appreciative of the efforts and work that's gone into them. We heard about using online learning and how that had increased or had recorded the increase of anxiety and depression in Malaysia. We then went on to Nigeria, where we heard that despite having to move on to online, just going to mute somebody there, yeah. Just moving on to online learning actually resulted in better results during COVID. And then finally, we listened to the results of a study where there were interventions to encourage students to use video in meetings and the effect of that. All very interesting, really, really fascinating stuff. Thank you all very much, and thank you to our audience for your participation and the questions. I'm going to close this session now, just so that we can make sure you can all move on to the next one. Thank you very much for coming.